Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. As many of you know, my interviews this month are with people from the Miami International Book Fair, and my guest now is Tessa Fontaine. She is the author of The Electric Woman, a memoir in death-defying acts. This is her story in the midst of losing her mother and finding herself out on the road with the World of Wonders, America's last traveling sideshow. She earns a place in the crew and transforms into escape artist Tex Fontaine, headless woman Olga Hess, and Electra, a woman whose body takes in electric currents and turns them into light. Welcome, Tessa, and I can't wait to hear about all these amazing stories. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to get to talk to you today.
So tell us a little bit about, why when losing your mother, you found yourself out on the road with this amazing company, World of Wonders.
Yeah, it's not the usual thing that people do when they're losing their parents. But for me, I think my whole life, my mom had been this very bold, adventurous, kind of wild woman. She, as a younger woman, had performed as a stunt surfer. So she would climb on top of surfers' shoulders and, perform sort of the little acrobatics up there. And she was a kind of an extreme deep sea fisherman for a while in Oregon. And she just had a really bold personality. And I always, thought of myself as being pretty shy and meek and fearful. And so she had a series of massive strokes and in 2011 or 2010, excuse me. And as I was trying to, sort of get through the grief of that and try to figure out how to kind of reimagine my relationship with her, because she lost her ability to talk and walk and was really pretty severely altered mentally. I started learning about this sideshow, the World of Wonders, and it seemed like it's the last sideshow that travels around, and it seemed like this just group of people who are willing to be extremely bold and do these dangerous things and delight audiences. And I was just really filled with wonder. And so I went down and kind of started interviewing some of the folks in the show and kind of following them around like a puppy dog. And eventually the boss just said to me, look, if you really want to understand what this world is like, why don't you just join us? And I thought about my mom, and I thought about what she would have done in that situation. She had had her strokes 2.5 years before that. And it seems like she would have said, yes, do the thing, do the crazy, wild thing, do the brilliant, bright thing. And so that's what I did. It also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you didn't grow up in this culture of all these things that she did.
No, not at all. I really was a pretty scared little kid. I mean, just really shy, really kind of physically afraid of a lot of things. I didn't, I never jumped off of the diving board or cliffed into water. I was just kind of timid, and I didn't really know anything about the circus or sideshow. I was interested in it, but didn't have any family connection to it. So, no, I didn't know anything about it. But I guess the thing that made me, kind of decide to do it completely was also the fact that despite my mom not recovering very much, she and my stepdad made this decision that when she kind of got out of the hospital, which was about a year she was in there, they decided, like, look, we don't want to just kind of stay at home and be safe and take care of my mom, which is, I think, what most people do in that situation. And so they decided that they were just going to take this long delayed trip to Italy that they had always wanted to take, and that it didn't matter to them whether they would return or not. So my family, we really thought it was the last time we would see them. And so that decision was made, and they were getting ready to leave when I was invited to join the sideshow. So those two things happened simultaneously, and the book kind of follows those two journeys taking place at the same time.
So were you not raised by your mom?
I was raised by my mom, yes.
But she was doing other things when she was raising you. She had gone through these other experiences ahead of time.
Right. Yes. So when she was raising me and my brother, she was a painter. She was an artist. She owned her own business painting fabric. So she still was a really vibrant sort of wild woman, but had gotten past her physical wildness that she had done when she was younger, but was still very charismatic and really kind of lively and bold and bright as she was raising us. Yes.
So how did you morph, and that's my word, morph, into escape artist Tex Fontaine, then into a headless woman, Olga Hess, and then Electra, a woman whose body takes in electric currents? I mean, 3 distinct characters and different sexes, and it's just curious.
Sure. Yeah, actually, those are just 3 of probably 10 different roles that I did out in the sideshow. All of us performers had to be able to perform every act. So the first roles that I learned out there were as a fire eater and snake charmer and escape artist. And so it was just a matter of learning the acts and like when I learned to eat fire, for example, I thought that there would be some kind of trick, some kind of, something that people did that would be very obvious from the outside. And I was really horrified to learn that actually, in order to eat fire, what you do is you eat fire. That's just what you do. You just put this flaming torch in your mouth and you extinguish the flame by basically getting rid of the oxygen, close your mouth around it so it cuts off the oxygen. And so I morphed into these characters, I think, by just having to face some of the fears about, what it is to do the acts and do it anyway. So to be kind of afraid and then still choose to do it. And so I performed all of those acts in the beginning, and then I also became, as you mentioned, the headless woman. I was also a 4-legged woman. I talked a lot of acts, which means I was the person on the microphone kind of explaining what was happening during, say, a contortionist act or the bed of nails, and then, eventually Electra. So I had many identities, and throughout the show, I would move in and out of all of those acts, and we performed the show over and over and over all day. So I would be each version of myself, each one of those characters, maybe 20 or 30 times each day.
Amazing. So the public who was watching this, did they buy into all of this?
It was a really mixed bag. It was really split. Some people loved it and really bought into it and were really delighted by what was going on. And some people were not. Some people felt, like they were promised to see a woman with a woman's head and a spider body, and indeed, it was an illusion, and so they were disappointed. So it really varied. We performed in fairs, like carnival fairs and fairs, and so we played in fairs as big as the Minnesota State Fair, which is the second biggest fair in the country, and a bunch of other big state fairs, and also some really small county fairs that we really ran the gamut. And sometimes it depended a little bit on where we were. So like if people knew a little bit about the sideshow or a little bit about the history, they were a little bit more willing to go along with what we were doing. But it was really surprising sometimes. I remember in particular one woman who had some kids with her, and she left the show, and our bally talker, who's like a barker, asked her how she liked the show, and she said, like, oh, I thought it was really boring. There wasn't even any blood. And that was really astonishing to hear, like, as if we weren't real, human bodies performing, sword swallowing and fire eating and human blockhead, which is where you hammer a huge nail up your nose. I mean, like, really dangerous acts that in some ways I think there's kind of a disconnect between live performance sometimes now. We're so used to seeing things that are, really violent or really extreme on TV and, on YouTube and stuff. And so some people, seeing us perform these things live, we're kind of like, nah, I've seen better. And like, what? These are our real bodies doing this.
Wow. Well, I can't believe you did this 20, 30 times a day. I mean, that had to be really taxing on you, on your body, on your mind. I mean, that's unbelievable. But I also, this show does not exist anymore. Is that correct?
No, it does. It does exist.
Oh, it does.
It's the one traveling sideshow that still exists, and it still is traveling around. It's changed form a little bit since I was in the show. They don't perform 20 or 30 times a day anymore. They perform just a couple of shows a day, which is a much more sustainable lifestyle. But there's still a fantastic show with fantastic performers, and they actually perform around Florida a fair amount. So I would encourage everyone to see The World of Wonders.
So why did you leave?
Why did I leave the show?
Yes.
Well, I decided to be out there for one full season, and it was really hard. I mean, as you just mentioned, it was extremely taxing. The performing itself was really, really difficult. I mean, just exhausting. We'd be performing from when the show, a carnival opened, which was maybe 10 a.m., till when it closed, which would be maybe midnight or 2 a.m. So you are performing all day. You're setting up your tent and your stages and tearing it down through the night before and after each carnival and driving on to the next one. And also, all of us lived in the back of a semi-truck. We lived in the trailer of a semi-truck. We didn't have rooms. It was not that, like, glamorous circus train life that you kind of see in the movies. So it was really, really a tough life. And I was committed to staying out there for one full season. I really felt like I would think about my mom all the time and think about the way that she was able to endure so much discomfort and pain and, trying to recover and having so many successes and failures. And I would just think, like, I have to be able to last a season out here. And so I did. I made it through the season. But I was also really sure that at the end of the season that, like, I had that adventure. I'd lived that experience. And I was going to let other professional performers take it from there. And I was going to go on to being a writer, which is what I'd been doing before and have continued to do afterwards.
So how old were you when you did this?
I turned 30 out on the road. So started when I was 29 and finished when I was 30, and that was in the 2013 season.
Wow, that's interesting because most people you think would either do this at 16 or 18 or 20, but 29, Usually you've gotten to a place where, I pretty much know where I'm going and I know what I want to do. So that was a real changeover for you. But again, I think it really developed you as a person, and you began to see things not only from the performer side, but you got to meet people and hear the audience's reaction and see how they related to what you were doing. And as a writer, I think that's immeasurable. I mean, you had experiences that nobody else can even come to talk about. So that is amazing. So you're writing now, and this is kind of, it's kind of autobiographical, I guess you would say. What type of writing do you normally do?
Yeah, this book is a memoir, so it is entirely autobiographical. It's a true story about being on the road with the sideshow, and also the story of my mom and stepdad and this journey that they took to Italy and sort of her illness and recovery. So I write or have written other kind of nonfiction, other kinds of personal nonfiction like that, sort of memoir stuff. I've also written a lot of fiction, and so right now I'm working on a novel. And so yeah, I kind of write everything in between for magazines, and this was my first book that came out, but I'm working hard on getting the next one out now.
Well, that's the key. So are you going to be coming to the book fair at all? Are people going to be able to meet you?
Yes, I will be at the Miami Book Fair. I'm so excited. I haven't been to Miami before or this book fair, and so I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I will be there that whole weekend, yes.
Ah, well, that'll be wonderful. So your times will be posted so people will know how to come and see you, et cetera, correct?
Yes, exactly. I don't actually know the times yet, but it'll be on the website, and I think I'll be paired with another memoir writer, and we will give a reading and talk about our books, and there'll be a book signing, and I would be so happy to meet some readers in Miami and talk about some of the stuff.
Well, Miami's quite a place to come to if you've never been, so be prepared to have some wonderful experiences at the same time.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your mom. Did she end up going on the trip to Italy with your stepdad?
She did, yeah. So they had been, my stepdad kind of proposed this idea while she was actually still in the hospital. I mean, she had a trach and she was hooked up to all these machines. And I mean, it was just inconceivable to think about her taking a round the world trip. She continued to have small strokes after the first big stroke. And so they had to permanently remove part of her bone plate in her head. So she, they were never able to put that back on, which meant that she couldn't fly on an airplane because we need that. That seemed like there's no way that this can happen. This is impossible. So I think that we, my brother and aunts and uncles and stuff, sort of said like, oh, wouldn't that be nice for you guys to do that? As just kind of a way of trying to help keep their spirits high, but not thinking that in any way they would actually go through with it. And then my mom got out of the hospital and medically was a little bit stable, although still could not talk or walk. She was paralyzed on one side and had a very severe cognitive sort of disabilities. But my stepdad just kept planning and bought them train tickets. They lived outside of San Francisco, and so bought them train tickets across the country to New York, and then boat tickets from there over to Europe, and then they would sort of be in Italy and take the train around. And so they ended up going, and they left just about a month after I left for the sideshow. So I wasn't able to talk to them very much, but I would get these, text messages or emails from them with just kind of a photo of my mom, like on this ship crossing the ocean. And I mean, it was both like kind of the most romantic thing that one can imagine doing, but romantic for like a stranger to do, and when it's your actual family doing it, and you think it's the last time you're ever going to see them. It's pretty horrifying. Also, I mean, it was really sad and also beautiful, and it felt like a lot of really, really mixed feelings for my brother and I.
Well, this whole memoir that we're talking about, story of your mom and your step in life before your adventure, what happened to her, and the scenes, I can just see them in the hospital and all those tubes and everything going on, and then your stepdad saying, no, this is all going to be fine, and we're going to go to Italy, and we're going to find a way to do it, and then making that happen, and then you at the same time going into this altered life of going through all these performances. And, I can just see this being made into some movie that I don't know if people would believe or not, but I mean, but it's definitely there. So what are your plans? Your plans are to write another book. And is it going to be something that is, again, autobiographical? Is it going to be a how-to? Is it going to be a novel? What is it going to be?
Yeah. The book I'm writing right now is a novel. So it's totally different from this memoir. It's not about sideshows, but it is about it deals with some of these things, some of the same questions, I think. And I think I think a lot of writers end up doing that. We have like certain questions that kind of obsess us. So again, I'm thinking about people who are kind of performers and who try to do things that seem more extraordinary than we sort of would believe them to be. So that's been pretty fun to write. And then I also, write some nonfiction kind of articles and stuff for magazines sometimes, some shorter stuff. So I have a good variety. And also I love your idea about the movie, and I agree with you. And right now there's a screenwriter who's working on it, so fingers crossed that it makes the leap to the screen. I would sure love to see someone else's, rendition of my story.
Wow, that's great. So it may happen. See, we never know. We're predicting the future.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I think that the book fair, because I've attended a couple of times, is a massive undertaking. I mean, it is huge. It is difficult to get around. I will tell you, it is difficult to get around.
Mm.
It's so
Okay.
big, and there's so many things going on. And if you happen to end up at the wrong place, it takes you a while to get to the other place. But I would strongly suggest any of our listeners who are either in the Miami area or are thinking of coming to the Miami area because they are really book oriented, like to meet authors, want to hear the genuine stories. This is something I think you should do. I mean, not only do you get to meet Tessa in person and ask her any questions that you might want to, but I think once you meet her, and this is always the crux of everything, once you meet her, you understand why she did the things she did and why she does the things that she does. Because it takes a special kind of person, first of all, to go through what you went through with your mom. That's not easy in itself. I mean, that was a long struggle that she went through, but you and your brother had to go through that as well. So
Mhm.
that's a very big component of this. And then the other part of it is whatever possessed you to do this. I mean, you talk about being shy. You talk about, kind of staying in the background. And of course, a lot of writers do that. They experience great things through their writing, but not necessarily putting themselves out there. So, talking about what actually made you do what you did, I think all of that is an amazing experience. So, we have about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to tell our listeners that we haven't talked about?
Sure, yeah, and thanks for those kind words. I really appreciate it, and I really hope to meet some of these listeners out at the book fair. It would be really, really wonderful. But I think the thing that became true for me out on the road with the sideshow that also was true in, helping my mom, who had just really, who I knew her to be had altered really entirely. Was this idea that I had really thought of myself as this, fearful person who couldn't do much in their life. And I thought that there were other kinds of people who were bold and courageous. And once I started learning some of these sideshow acts, I had this really amazing and strange realization, which was that actually, like, I was going to be afraid of eating fire and charming a boa constrictor and swallowing a sword. Those are natural things to be afraid of. And I was going to be afraid and still do the thing I needed to do. So it wasn't a matter of becoming a courageous person. It was a matter of being fearful and still going forward and doing the thing. So in some way, like ignoring my instincts, which was a really strange lesson, but also became important for me in the way that I was with my mom, not being fearful of just this really different form she had taken and trying to just be really kind of authentically there with her and knowing that there wasn't going to be a shortcut around this long-term grief of losing her over a long period of time, that I just had to stick with it and endure the pain, and that was just part of it. And ultimately it ended up being just an incredible gift and sort of changed my life in really amazing ways.
Well, I thank you for being with us, Tessa. My guest has been Tessa Fontaine, the author of The Electric Woman. Thanks so much for being with us, and lots of luck at the book fair.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Karen. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.